Hi, welcome to another Expert Insights discussion. Today we look at total revenue. Yes, that topic which has been discussed for years and years, but still remains a dream for most. In today's discussion, we actually look at the reality of the challenge and why it's easier to talk about it than to do it. To share their insights and experiences, we are joined by Karen of Geo Analytics, Amrita of Virgin Hotels, and Jens of Pandox. We ask, is the industry now crystal clear about what total revenue management actually means? Using corporate business as an example, our guests outline why it is so challenging and why it isn't really being done. And finally, we ask, how can technology help, or is it actually a hindrance to achieving total revenue management? Really hope you enjoy the conversation. Total revenue management. Okay, let's start first of all with, do we know, is there a clear definition of what total revenue management actually is? And you can jump in here. This is a free-flowing conversation. It's not scripted, so anyone can kind of jump in and answer the question. Who wants to go? Amrita, you look like you're eager to get.
I'm ready.
Go on then.
I think we do know what total revenue is. It's a combination of all the revenue streams that you have in a hotel. So you've got bedrooms, your food and beverage outlets, you could have retail, spa. And when you combine all of those different departments, you should have total revenue at the bottom of it, right? But I think talking about where it goes wrong is that everybody concentrates on just their department. So you have one leader who is looking after rooms revenue. You've got one who's looking after F&B, and another one after retail, another one after spa. And they're so passionate in what they do. And I think this is the nice thing about hospitality. We hire people who are very passionate in their own departments. But sometimes I think they forget the big picture and they're just concentrating on their bit and how to make that a success. So I think it goes down to having all the departments collaborating together to get to the total revenue piece. And I think we haven't gotten there yet, unfortunately.
Yeah. From your perspective, from a Pandox and an individual perspective, total revenue management, what does it actually mean to you? Is there a clear definition?
Yeah, but I think just come back to what you said in the beginning there with the Rubik's Cube. It's it's a complex field, right? And the landscape is very complex. So I think that in general, that's probably why don't have that super clear potential definition also of what we do. Because some might do, let's say, looking at doing some kind of revenue management strategy for rooms and let's say M&E, the two big parts of it, but they wouldn't do, let's say, necessarily anything that has to do with food and beverage in general or other revenue streams. So I think it depends a little bit also on the approach that I've taken, that there's no sort of standardized direction or like we have in the rooms, right? Mm-hmm. But I totally agree with what Amrita said there. It's really the kind of silos that have been built up between departments that potentially has made us have a bit of too much focus potentially on rooms.
We'll dive into that in a minute. And Karen, your take on it. We've had two answers so far, and neither have not that they disagree, but neither have said, yeah, this is what's your take on it?
Well, I think the silos is absolutely, I would say, a main issue generally in our industry. Mm-hmm. I think it's as well the lack of data, or data generally points you in a specific direction of here's an opportunity or here's a risk. And where we somehow managed to get data out of our PMSs on a rooms perspective, if we think about the data available in restaurants, that's very, very limited. And let's not speak about combining the data, right? If we want to break the silos, we would need to make sure that actually the F&B revenue and the rooms revenue are somewhere combined. Mm-hmm. And that there is ideally one person looking after all of those revenue streams, and then obviously communicating with whoever is the head of each department. So I think it's a good starting point, or you could turn it around and say the lack of it is probably as well due to the missing data that we have. We just start shooting a little bit in the dark, right?
Two things that I would take also from your responses are this silos, and everyone was speaking during COVID about how the silos are going to be breaking down, but I kind of question that a little bit, and I'll be interested in getting your take on it. And then technology, and because we talk about data, but without technology we don't get the data. So there's elements in and around data, extraction of data, combining data. So let's maybe start with, well, let's pick up on the technology piece first, and what you guys have experienced, and where you see potentially the technology helping or hindering the movement towards total revenue management. Who wants to pick that one up?
I could say something about that. So I think where I would rather see it as an opportunity, and let me just give you a very concrete example. So let's say you are a corporate sales manager and you're in charge of a specific amount of accounts. Then generally what you do every year when it's renegotiation time, you look at how much room nights were produced, what is the average rate, have they been producing a good average rate compared to the ADR of my hotel? And then if they've been doing more than they promised us to do, you go, you know what, maybe I'll renegotiate a better rate. They seem to be a better account, good account. And that's very traditionally how we look at it. If we start looking at that specific account again, and we start looking at not only what that account has produced in room revenue, but how much have they spent in the bar, right? If I start adding that additional element, it might not be your corporate account that has, let's say, the highest average rate that brings you most profit or total revenue, but it might well be that it's an account that has a much lower average rate, maybe less volume, but they spend a lot in the bar, or every week when they come, they have dinner in the restaurant. So if we already very pragmatically start looking at total production of an account, looking at total revenue management there, having the data available there, I think that's just already a very good step forward in starting to look at total revenue management. And then the corporate account is a classic example, but ideally we need to start doing that when we look at where our guests coming from, which channels are producing more total revenue, etc., and not just concentrating on ADR only.
Yeah,
Karen, I absolutely agree.
Go.
No, sorry. It's something that we talk about quite a lot in the hotel, and I absolutely agree with you. It's, not just looking, and you do tend to look at the corporate accounts, and some of them are still static. They haven't moved to the dynamic pricing yet. And you're like, are they really worth it? Or could you replace that with a higher ADR transient? But then it is about looking at, how much meeting and events revenue are they bringing? How much are they actually spending in the restaurant? So I think I absolutely agree with you. So corporates, I think we are getting there for sure. I think we are starting to think about it as a total revenue segment and what else they are bringing in. But to your point, I think we need to start segmenting our guests in buckets and see somebody from booking.com could be just here for a night in and out, and that doesn't bring you any incremental revenue at all. So I think that this is where we need to start digging into the segments properly and seeing which one is the most profitable one and not just the highest ADR. So absolutely agree with you there.
Makes sense, Jens?
I think what's interesting is that we're sitting here today and that we actually don't consider this already. Because if you think about like if any other industry and you would look at it, you would say, how well is that corporate account performing? And you would say, well, its room revenue production is down. Okay, but what about the rest? That we don't know. We don't really understand that. So maybe like worse performing. And I think it's interesting to just to try to dig a bit of why. Like why wouldn't we have developed it? Why is the technology not there? And what I'm sort of suspecting is that a lot of the incentives around total revenue hasn't really been there for many of the players. Like if you take, let's say, a lot of the branded properties that potentially are on a franchise or a management agreement, where total revenue actually not that interesting. So it hasn't been interesting to potentially to some of the big brands to even look at that, because if a contract is based on room revenue, I don't really care what happens what happens at the property. So there are some things I think that have been driving this evolution or non-evolution.
It makes sense. Quick question for you, all three of you. Everything, as you said, Jens, it's like I can't believe any other business they'd be doing this. But a lot of this, of what you've outlined, seems to me that because of the silos that you mentioned, Amrita, you've got data and revenue data coming in different silos, different boxes. So whilst it can seem logical to say, well, let's work out a thread for this guest or for this account, can the technology actually do that? Because that's what I mean, there's technology that can help us to capture that information. Is the technology structure within a hotel able to actually do that?
I would like to think that in the future it should be possible because we have the data. I don't think, or not to my experience, that we have it. We have great revenue management systems we use, and they can get as granular as you would want it to be. For F&B, we take our data through the POS systems or the PMS, which is sometimes not great. But again, like if you are trying to figure out the total revenue worth of even an individual or the lifetime value of a customer or a corporate account or whatever it may be, I don't think that we have all the data feeding into the right system to give you that. Like for example, Mr. Smith, let's take from, Philips, has a corporate rate with us. We know that for sure, from our RMS or PMS, we can pull that data and say Philips produces that many nights. But then, the same person, Mr. Smith, goes to the bar and spends £300 a night. That data is attached in the PMS to his booking. But do we then look at it, that actually belongs to Philips?
Can it be pulled through? Is there ways it can be attached?
You can, but it's very manual. I think it's still very manual. I don't think that we've developed a technology that gives you that all together. You would still have to pull different reports to get to the bottom of what is that actually worth.
Jens?
So I think like one source that we've had in the last few years, I think that where you could get that type of data would be in the CRM, right? Like where they would pull it and they would structure it a little bit, but it wouldn't be something, it would be something that marketing would use. And maybe they would use it to highlight, look, this is a nice report for the GM. Look, this is our best guests. But it wouldn't be something that would then be shared with revenue management or everything been done about that. So that's also, it kind of sits there in a way, but it's not really combined with the rest of the activities that are happening in revenue management. It's not standardized enough, I think. Like most, of course, you can probably find players like Yuyo that can do these things, but it's not standardized enough within the systems that, let's say, the majority hoteliers are using.
And Karen, from your side, having had a foot in both camps, hotelier and now tech, what's your take on?
Well, I'm happy to say that it exists, but it's not. I guess it's not a common thing, right? I agree. If you look at the CRS, if you look at PMS, if you look at the POS, the data sits there, but it's not combined. So as a hotelier, you actually have to have a BI tool in place, and then still depending, not every BI tool might pull all of the data, right? But there are tools out there that actually combine the data, and then you can link it back to Mr. Smith, to Philips, to a segment, to a country, even if you'd like. But again, as a hotelier, that means another system on your tech stack that needs to be added. And I think that will probably bring us to the answer of why hasn't it really moved? Because it's true, we do speak about it for ages. Actually, I teach revenue management, and we use a book which is ancient. It's about 20 years old. And in that book, we speak about total revenue management. Here I am, and saying to my students, yeah, you know what, in practice, it ain't happening a lot. But I think it is because of the technology, right?
Well, I hope that conversation was of interest, and thanks again to Karen, Amrita and Jens for joining us. If you have any thoughts or views on this conversation, please feel free to comment below. If you like the discussion, please don't forget a thumbs up. And if you're interested in more of our videos, here is a link to our Expert Insights playlist. Here is a link to our Coffee Time Chat playlist. And here is the button if you'd like to subscribe so you don't miss out on future videos. Thanks again for watching.